In the months that followed, Stillknight continued monitoring the humans that interacted with the Autobots closely. They appeared to be the target of Decepticons, and as such, Stillknight felt obligated to keep close watch on them. When in her base, she was exploring more of human technology and trying to integrate it into Cybertronian devices. In reverse engineering some of their devices, she had begun to see different approaches of the inventors that created them. That understanding allowed her to better integrate certain devices over others. Fowler was leaving the Autobot base in an aircraft, which was not out of the ordinary. Before he completed his trip, however, he was intercepted by 2 Decepticon aircraft. Stillknight took flight. She followed their signals until they began to fade. Despite being cloaked, she could still track them, but the signal was somewhat intermittent and corrupted. As she flew through the clouds, she ran into the Decepticon warship. Landing softly atop the ship, she continued monitoring communications. Stillknight deployed several miniature drones and knelt on the bow of the ship, focusing on the sounds she heard. Curiously, there was something familiar within, but she couldn't place it. With the drones taking their places at different levels, she was able to use echolocation to determine where the Cybertronians were and where Fowler was. Choosing the path of least resistance, she activated her portable cloak. As a knight, she could either cloak and observe, or uncloak and fight. It was unacceptable as a knight to fight cloaked. Her mission today was not to take on the Decepticons, it was to rescue Fowler. Each time Stillknight passed the Decepticon insignia, she involuntarily winced and had to deliberately focus to find calm in her spark again. Through the corridors were mostly servant-class Decepticons. As she neared Fowler's location, she found more warrior-class Decepticons. As Fowler's life signs did not appear to be in imminent danger, she waited for someone to enter so the doors would open. She entered after them. She found Fowler bound by the wrists from the ceiling. There were 2 guards in the room. Fowler was in and out of consciousness, but Stillknight waited to act, searching for a moment that her echolocation indicated the most efficient exit possible. The drones had not been detected, and finally, the time came. Stillknight activated the Cybertronian equivalent of an EMP to shut down their cameras and shock the guards. She took Fowler, and the doors opened. Cloaked, she calmly walked down the corridors as more guards went to check the brig. She simply stepped out of their way. It was really quite a straightforward rescue. That is, until a bulkhead dropped in front of her. Another some distance behind her. She did not think she was discovered. It was more likely that they were taking precautions assuming an intruder. Stillknight continued scanning using the drones and their echolocation. As she waited patiently, the bulkhead opened, and warrior-class troopers entered. They scanned around and saw nothing. They walked by her. Then, on their comms, she could hear that all other units also reported clear. Fowler began to awaken in a sleepy stupor. "Open fire," said Megatron's voice over communications. Stillknight first watched them fire away from her. Then they turned and prepared to fire on her position. With the bulkheads open, she took flight. She heard their firing, but she successfully evaded that group of troops. As she flew through the corridors using her echolocation to guide her, she found a Y coming up, with troops at both ends. She transformed and landed. Fowler was complaining of all the moving around, then began to realize what was happening. "Hey, it's you again," he shouted. Stillknight waited patiently to see if the troops would move on their own. They did not, and another group approached from the rear. "Where are we? Last I remember I was flying back from Prime's base," Fowler said. Now surrounded, Stillknight saw no other way but to fight. As a result, she decided the most direct route to an exit, and chose to take the right at the Y before dropping her cloak. The troopers had been standing, waiting for an intruder to present itself, then suddenly were faced with darkness. They tried their comms, but there was no answer. Something was interfering with communications, and had turned out the lights. She walked toward them unarmed. Then they opened fire. In a swift movement, Stillknight removed the blaze from her back and began running. "What are you— Ah!" Fowler shouted as Stillknight ran at the troops. With ease, Stillknight took the troopers down. She turned her cloak back on and took flight. "Ratchet, where do you think we've been?" Bulkhead said, exasperated. "We know we're low on energon. We just need to keep searching and keep an eye out for con mining ops." Ratchet opened his mouth to respond, but froze. His optics widened as he stared over Bulkhead's shoulder. "Intruder!" he barked. Weapons were instantly drawn. RC turned, her optics narrowing. "You again," RC said. Stillknight stood just inside the base, cloak removed, motionless and calm. Is this, Ratchet started, the Knight? Jack stepped forward. Yeah, that's her, Jack said. RC and the others slowly lowered their weapons. Ratchet didn't. How did you find our base? And how did you get in here? He asked. Stillknight didn't answer. Instead, her chest plating shifted, revealing a figure. Special Agent Fowler? Ratchet gasped as she handed him over. That's right, Fowler groaned. Old Stillknight here pulled my tailpipe out of trouble again. Decepticons? RC asked. That's right. Ambushed me before I could even let Uncle Sam know I'd be late for dinner, Fowler replied. You said Stillknight? Asked Jack, interested. Fowler turned to Jack. Yeah, the Docbot said that was her name. Stillknight, Knight of the Temple. So you do think you're a knight then, Ratchet said disbelievingly. Stillknight looked at him and remembered her early skepticism learning the ways of the knights. She then turned to leave. Wait a moment. You can't just leave knowing the location of our base. We need to tell Optimus, Ratchet exclaimed. Ratchet, she saw you all move in last year. She just hadn't dropped by, Fowler responded. Been keeping an eye on all of us from the shadows. Creep-y, said Miko. She's not here to look in the windows, Miko. Just trying to keep the cons off our backs when needed, as it was today, matter of fact, Fowler said. Stillknight continued to leave. As she attempted to do so, Ratchet stood in front of her to block her path. Ratchet? RC asked in a warning tone. I don't trust someone who just walks into our base and thinks they can just walk out. We need to wait for Optimus. How can we be certain she won't tell the Decepticons where our base is? Stillknight understood his caution, and it made sense, although she had just come from the warship itself and managed to keep her mouth shut. Ratchet, we just came from the Khan's warship. I think if she wanted them to know where your base was, that would have been a convenient time to have divulged the information, Fowler said. You came from the Decepticon warship? Ratchet asked, awestruck. That's right. Like I said, Decepticon ambush, knocked me out, and dragged me to their ship to seek information, Fowler responded. Stillknight here showed up and very discreetly removed me from the ship. I don't think they ever saw her, actually. Ratchet and the others processed that information for a moment, until the towering footsteps of another Cybertronian could be heard at the base's entrance. Optimus! We have something of an intruder, Ratchet said, motioning at Stillknight. More of a guest, really, Fowler corrected. She is a Knight of the Temple, Optimus, Jack said. She goes by Stillknight. Optimus took in the scene with quiet precision. Stillknight, welcome to Autobot Outpost Omega-1. If you are injured, our medic can assist. And on behalf of all of us, our apologies for the misunderstanding, Optimus said. Ratchet muttered something to himself and shifted uneasily. Stillknight looked from the Prime to the medic and back. I do have one request, Optimus added. I have been searching for more information on the Knights of the Temple. There is little more than myth and exaggeration in the records that remain. But one account is consistent, that the Knights have a semi-sentient armor that bonds to them. They form a sort of symbiotic relationship, and their weapons cannot be wielded by others. Would you allow us a demonstration? Stillknight considered what he said. Because it was still Ratchet that was nearest her, she removed an orange glowing blade from her back and placed it through the floor in front of him. She then stepped back and offered out her hand, motioning for him to attempt to grasp the weapon. After first looking from Optimus to Stillknight, Ratchet bent to grasp it. The blade went from glowing orange to a dull bronze color. It also became quite fixed to the earth. Ratchet tried harder to raise it and was unable. He stepped back and said, This proves nothing. The Knights of the Temple have many myths around them. This may be the most plausible of them all. Bulkhead and Bumblebee had already stepped forward to try to lift it. First Bumblebee tried, then when he was unable to, Bulkhead did. Bulkhead succeeded in cracking the floor beneath his feet, but he could not lift the blade. Stillknight then approached the blade when they were finished. As she reached out to grasp it, it glowed brightly once again and entered her hand on its own in one soft swoop. The glowing blade was pulsing gently and harmoniously with Stillknight's spark. It was as though the presence of the armor soothed her, and she it. With care and appreciation, Stillknight placed the blade back into its holster to join the other on her back. Suppose that's proof enough, Bulkhead said. Thank you, Stillknight. It is an honor to meet a true Knight of the Temple, Optimus said. Stillknight nodded, then turned to leave. Stillknight, Jack shouted. Then, after she turned, he turned rather red in the cheeks. It was good to see you again. Stillknight looked at him thoughtfully. She then walked over to him and removed the wrist controller from her wrist. She transformed it into a smaller shape, then offered it to him. When he took it, Stillknight motioned for him to place it onto his wrist. Jack did so, then mimicking Stillknight, tapped it once. He then said, I don't understand. And through Stillknight's communication system, the voice could be heard. I don't understand. Oh, Jack exclaimed. That's pretty handy. Thank you. Stillknight nodded, then tapped her own wrist 3 times, signaling him to do the same. When he did so, her forearm flashed. She lifted her forearm, and a holographic image of both Jack and his coordinates was visible, showing an SOS. Yeah, maybe those should be issued to all of us, Fowler muttered, for safety purposes and all. Stillknight looked at him, then turned to leave. This time, no one stopped her.